Confidential information. Don't put confidential information in your CV. Certainly don't put it anywhere near LinkedIn, but at the same time, we want to make sure you're putting your best foot forward and describing how good you are. We don't want you underselling yourself. So how do you handle that? Well, be really sensitive about the type of information you're putting on your CV. Think carefully about how you're describing roles and responsibilities. It sometimes can be sometimes it can be market moving information if you put that data or that bullet point in your CV and that gets into public realms. We need to avoid that at all costs, right? We can't have your CV being a source or a data leakage source. That is not a good look for anybody. So be really careful about any information you're putting in your CV that is confidential or could be described as confidential. How do you know? Well, think it is. Of course, I've spent a lot of time throughout this process saying, please put in numbers and detail and so on. Yes, but not anything that would be deemed confidential. So I think it's perfectly fine to say you ran 7 projects. Yes, I think that's okay. I also think it's perfectly fine to say I ran 7 projects with a budget of 20 million. I think that's okay, right? Because it's very high level. But what is not okay, I would suggest, is I ran the so-and-so project which delivered on this point. It was this precise budget. It had this profit and loss. You've got to be very sensitive to any information that you're going to be giving that is confidential. Now, in some cases, it may be wholly inappropriate to say projects worth 20 million, in which case you can say projects worth tens of millions or projects into 7 or 8 figures, right? So you can describe and you can use descriptors that indicate the scale of the responsibility without saying anything. Likewise, you might not say, we did this great thing for Apple computers. No, you might be required to say, or you might need to say, we did this great thing for a leading international mobile phone company, right? Or for a massive South Korean outfit, right? Or for a government institution, but you can't say who. Right, or for a leading international bank, or for a tier 1 bank. There's all these different definitions that you can be using. So we have this tension. We have a tension between wanting to show off about how good you are, right? Genuinely how about good you are and how the responsibilities you've got are amazing, right? We want that, but at the same time, make sure, reread and make sure you're not giving anything away that could be deemed very sensitive, market moving or confidential. Now, if in doubt, obfuscate, meaning give it a summary, give it a term that isn't focusing on the precise sensitive nature. So a large computer company, a huge institution employing 45,000 people, for example, right? And that's okay. That is expected and understood. Now, one way of trying to understand whether what you've written is confidential is to put this to a friend or a colleague and saying, what do you think? And they can give you a view. So we don't want to be causing any damage in your CV to any employer. Absolutely not. And of course, any individual as well. So give a lot of thought to that. If you're in doubt, ask someone else. Get some advice. So if you're in doubt, get some advice from a colleague, a relative, someone that you trust who can say, yeah, no, I wouldn't put it that way, or that seems fine to me. So as I was saying, it is a tension because we do want you to be looking as brilliant as possible. Sometimes, unfortunately, you just can't mention Meta or Snapchat or whoever you've been working with, a really, really cool company. Sometimes you simply can't say that on the CV or it's inappropriate for you to do so. But you can certainly mention it to the recruiter and you can say, look, I haven't said who it is, but it's Meta, right? Because typically this stuff is not confidential, but you're being sensitive and you're showing that you're being sensitive to a future or prospective employer by not directly mentioning them if it's a particular project you've been doing that's quite sensitive. Of course, it's perfectly fine to say you've been working with Meta. It's factual, right? Okay, if that's the case. But look, as I say, if in doubt, get some good advice from a third party.